Well, it was you. Your brother just didn't look like anything I wanted. Anything that I thought anything that I wanted him to. He didn't look like the way I wanted him to. That's not how I wanted that to come out. Yeah.
Welcome. You are entering a strange realm. A realm of what ifs. What if movies, television shows, and video games were better, worse, bizarrer, or downright different? What might they look like? Find out on today's episode of CineCasters.
Welcome back to the CineCasters. This is the show where we watch movies or television shows, and then we talk about them and pull them apart and deconstruct them and try to pitch them back to each other in a different form that we, might think works a little bit better for our tastes or needs or thematic know-how. It's just an excuse to talk about movies and pitch them back to one another. My name is Janglez, and today I'm joined by Alessa.
Hi.
Alyssa's out of it today, apparently. And today it's a long weekend, so that's coming up for us. So
I didn't sleep well last night.
Oh,
so
well, that's
whatever.
also normal for you.
Yeah.
Today we are looking at the absolute crazy thrill ride. Anytime we do something in the Star Wars universe, it always is going to be divisive, even between Cinecasters. Today we're looking at Solo, a Star Wars story. Alessa, bring us through the backstory of how we got to Solo.
I really wanted to actually talk about Boba Fett.
The Book of Boba Fett.
And I don't actually remember the actual reasoning for why we chose Solo. Except we just knew it was divisive.
Yeah, we knew this one is apparently so I think it was... correct me if I'm wrong, but I think The Force Awakens came out. And then The Rise of Skywalker came out. Yeah, it was The Force Awakens, and then Rogue One, and then Rise of Skywalker, and then Solo came out. And everyone was like, The Force Awakens was great because it was really just A New Hope over again. And then everyone was like, oh, we're going to do Rogue One, which in my opinion is the best Star Wars movie.
A lot of people hold that opinion, yeah.
And then they had The Rise of Skywalker, The Last Jedi, which was very divisive. People were like, I hated it, I loved it. I sit on the side where I think it's very problematic, but I actually think it was quite clever in terms of what they were trying to do. New stuff, new ideas. But I do think that there was some problems with it still. But then Solo, a Star Wars story, came out. And this is the one where people were like, oh, I don't know if this is really all that good.
Yeah, so I hold the unpopular opinion that Solo is good.
Okay.
I know it's unpopular. I have a few reasons for that.
Yeah. I do also want to talk about why I didn't want to do the Book of Boba Fett to defend my position there. So I'm
still disappointed.
I know you're disappointed, but I have recently... I used to be a huge Star Wars fan. Huge. And when the... Rise of Skywalker came out, I didn't like the movie. I didn't think it was very good, but I had a fun time watching it regardless of how stupid it was. It was just Star Wars, space wizards.
Star Wars.
Yeah, it was a fun time, and it was stupid, and I was in the theaters and I saw it with my friends, and I was having fun talking about it, but online people were so mad about it, and it's I know that people should be passionate about what they're passionate about, but I found Star Wars hard to talk about with people because it's just... Nobody hates Star Wars like Star Wars fans. They're never happy with anything because it's not what they want, but they don't really know what they want. So when the Book of Boba Fett was announced, I still have a problem with this one, and I was trying to explain a little bit of it. But my problem with the Book of Boba Fett is that I don't understand why Boba Fett is cool. I do know why Boba Fett is cool, but I don't understand why people are fascinated with him, except for the fact that he's sort of this mysterious background character who nobody knows a lot about, and we never see his face, and that sort of makes him really mysterious and cool, right?
Yeah.
Okay. When you give that character a show of their own, which includes a backstory, you ruin that. Then they're not cool and mysterious anymore. So everyone who wanted a Book of Boba Fett because they wanted to know about this mysterious character was really actually this is just my opinion and it's controversial, but was really actually ruining the character for themselves, because no matter what backstory you give Boba Fett, it's never going to be as cool as anything you can imagine, because the mysteriousness, I think, is what makes Boba Fett cool.
Yeah.
And if you give him a backstory, which is, again, I haven't seen the show, but is, I think, part of what was going to happen in the show, then he stops being the mysterious, cool villain and starts being whatever it is that they decide him to be. And then the imagination part of what makes Boba Fett is cool. I never understood why Boba Fett was cool. He's such a background character, but he's not cool anymore if you know what makes him cool. It's better if it's just your imagination.
I mean, the thing is, anyone who's done a little bit of looking into it or watched the Clone Wars or whatever, they already know Boba's backstory for the most part.
A lot of it's in there.
They know about how he was raised and whatnot, and yeah. So it's not like he was always like this little figure of mystery. I think what makes Boba Fett interesting to me, especially with the series, is that he's just it's a space, like it's a Western.
Yeah, it's a Western.
But like we were saying, it's not a space Western.
Yeah.
Like it's he's not a space cowboy. He's a Tatooine cowboy.
But he is a space cowboy, but I know what you mean.
But, yeah.
Yeah. Except he's not
which is why I like
But
him.
he's also not a Tatooine cowboy. Because he wears the suit, the armor of a Mandalorian.
But he got that from his father. That was passed down to him.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So there's like all sorts of crazy lore
Yeah.
surrounding him. And the thing that really bothered me about that series that I wanted to talk about, if we were to do it, is how people only wanted to watch it because they wanted to see more of the Mandalorian. To me, the politics on Tatooine and seeing what Boba did after the movies was like just the coolest thing. Like, to me, I like those slower paced stuff though, right? Whereas
a lot of people
were
were
all
not a
like,
fan.
I just want to see the Mandalorian, and I'm like, he has his own show.
Yeah, go watch that show. It's 2 seasons. But I think what was also interesting is exactly what I was talking about, is people were excited about Boba Fett and Boba Fett happening, but what wound up happening is the Mandalorian became this mysterious, character that we don't know a lot about. He became the new Boba Fett, and people watched Boba Fett and they were like, it's too slow, it's not good. It's because we already know who Boba Fett is now. We have a story about him. Everybody wanted Boba Fett just to see the Mandalorian because the Mandalorian is the new Boba Fett. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Right?
I did have some other issues with the
course,
Boba Fett movie, and I had some ideas on how to fix it, which is why I wanted to do it as a
We'll get to it
because I already
eventually.
have ideas. But.
Yeah. But for me, I'm going to bring us back to Solo. For me, the reason I think why Mandalorian works so well is because it is the only series that we've had so far, or movie, that isn't tied to what Lucas did. It's in his universe, but we have brand new character in The Mandalorian and in Grogu, set in the Star Wars universe. And yes, Luke shows up, but the focus isn't tied to any of those characters, right? And Ahsoka shows up, and Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka is such a good casting choice.
So
Excellent.
good.
Yes. But it's not focused on them. They just show up. The focus is on this new story in a universe we're familiar with. None of the other series, including Solo, and probably to Solo's detriment, do this, right?
Yeah.
They always are focused and pinned down to what George Lucas did before. And it's like, Disney, you have this huge universe to explore. Stop going back over things that we already know. And Obi-Wan is doing the same thing to some extent. A lot of people were complaining about that because it just came out as well. And it's like, if you watch Rebels or Clone Wars, they set certain things up, and then apparently Obi-Wan actually undoes some of those things, or at least is clashing in terms of canon.
Yes.
And why do we need to do this? Why can't Obi-Wan have been about an Obi-Wan redemption, where he maybe he rejects the Jedi way, or maybe he has to come back to the Jedi way, or maybe he goes out into the desert Jesus style and finds the answer from Qui-Gon Jinn. You know what I mean? There's so many other things you could do rather than tying Obi-Wan to Luke or Leia for that amount of time, right?
But they wanted more origin stories.
We don't need more origin stories.
They love their origin stories. which is just so stupid because there's so many other characters, so many other Jedi out there, so many other like Imperial officers that you could go and they're so interesting, right? Like I want to learn more about some of the other Sith Lords, right?
Yeah.
Like
Give
me the real story of Darth Plagueis the Wise, please.
I want to know about Darth Plagueis the Wise. Go back to the old Republic. Go into the future. Go show me another part of the galaxy that's happening at the same time, where we can have fun, where we can be like, do you remember when the Death Star blew up? That happened. We already saw that movie, and they can talk about it in this movie, but it's a different part of the Rebels. Their job is something different, right? That's what made Rogue One, I think, so cool, because it was basically trying to, yes, tie up a plot hole, but because it was Rogue One and the way it was set up, you knew none of those characters were going to survive.
Exactly.
And it made Darth Vader scary. It was a way to be like, let's set up things without doing origin stories. Mm-hmm. I don't know, and like there are some cool characters that that were in Rise of Skywalker and in The Last Jedi that I would have liked to have seen more about as well. It's like, I don't know, we just stop making stories about characters we already love because you don't do a good job with them. Hence my problem with Solo. It's the same thing. I'm going to get into it for reals now. I think I really wanted to like this movie because I like Han Solo as a character. And the reason I don't think it works, and I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to be like, well, let's have Han Solo be this very, very green character. Like he's very new. He's very up and coming. And I just felt like things that should have been resolved because of how awesome Han Solo was were just happening to him.
Yep.
So they give us a motivation. He's going to go back to, is it Coruscant?
No,
the city planet that he's on. Corellia.
Yeah.
He's going to go back to Corellia so that he can save Kira. That's the point of the story. And it gives us that motivation. Because we see at the beginning when they're like running away and then eventually like stick back with each other. Like so while they're running away, they're trying to get through, and then she gets caught and he hands her the dice. Mm-hmm. So the motivation is that he has to get back to Corellia so that he can save her. Fine, but then when she shows up with Dryden Voss, it now what's his motivation? It was to save her. Nothing. It was to save her, but now we don't have motivation. That entire opening sequence doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's supposed to set us like, well, this is his backstory, but it doesn't matter. There's no motivation there because he's not going to go save her. Certainly, it makes her character better because now she's trying to like show how she's this, person who wants to survive, and we see that happen in the end. She's a survivor. She's not going to go with Han, which didn't make any sense to me either because she had the chance to betray him and then doesn't betray him, but then actually does betray him. And then there's also this thing with Darth Maul, which did not need to be there. Mm-hmm. And also, okay, I got to get into this. I'm going to go on a rant for a second here. Rant.
Go for it.
Okay, so at one point in time, she like attacks the dude when they're on the planet. And L7 is like, oh, I've never seen someone do that before. And Kira's like, it's called Terraskasi. It's like a martial art that Dryden Voss taught her. Terraskasi is an actual thing from the expanded universe. It was designed as a martial art. This is before Disney bought. It was designed as a martial art that could be used by non-force sensitive people to fight somebody who is force sensitive. Okay. Which means that Terraskasi is now canon.
Yeah.
In the Disney universe, which means that there are people out there who are like able to fight Jedi without using the Force.
Okay.
That wasn't even really canon in the original Star Wars series because it kind of was dumb. It's like, well, what's the point in being a Jedi then if you can just learn Terraskasi?
Yeah.
So that adds a whole bunch of really weird, stupid ideas. Like, it seemed to me that a lot of ideas were shoved into this movie without any actual plot. I don't know why I care. I wanted to care. I don't know why I care. I just don't. I mean, there was funny stuff in there. I thought the whole thing with Lando Calrissian. I will say, I think Lando Calrissian was the best part of this movie.
Yes.
He's hilarious.
I know that's divisive for some people as well.
Really?
Not a whole lot of people were really pleased with Donald Glover.
I thought Donald Glover was the best part of this movie,
I thought he
hands
was
down.
amazing.
I actually thought that Amelia Clark as Kira was a really good cast. She is an excellent actress. I think she does a really, really good job with what she's given. I think that her character is incredibly flawed because I have no idea what her motivation is.
Surviving. I don't know.
But she has the chance to leave with Han and doesn't.
Yep.
And instead decides to become the apprentice for Darth Maul. Is that going to be a thing? That felt like setup to me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That felt like setup to me.
Yeah.
Are we doing a sequel? The reason Rogue One worked is because there wasn't a sequel. It was a definitive story. But as Han leaves and they're staring at each other through this fancy yacht ship, which was cool, admittedly. The visuals are great in this movie. And it's a good shot, like that, him on the sand and her on the ship. I was like, cool, but who is this character? Why do I care? Why isn't she, like, all this does is, I don't know. I don't get it. It doesn't give me anything for Han as a character.
Yeah.
But
okay,
go on.
Okay, so I'm gonna get into my likes real quick.
Okay.
And then like my major flaw with this movie that we haven't even touched.
Which major flaw?
Oh, you'll see.
No, I just mean like there's so many, but go on.
I actually really enjoy this movie because I really like superhero movies and I really like origin stories. And this to me is it's actually, with the exception of the intro and Kira kind of throwing the whole plot a little bit sideways, it actually feels like a nice little like it feels, without looking too deep into it, like a nicely wrapped origin story for Han. We, as viewers who have already watched the other Star Wars movies, we know that he made the Kessel Run in however many
12 parsecs.
We know that he won the Millennium Falcon. We know that like he's like done all these things, right? Mm-hmm. And now we get to see him do it, which is like cool.
It's all right, but we already knew those things.
Yeah, I know. We already knew those things, and which is really interesting why we get to actually see them. We get to see him meet Chewbacca, which is like, cool. Like it's origin story stuff, mm-hmm. right? My main issue is like when you think about how young he is in this and how those are like his crowning achievements, right? Mm-hmm. And then how much time between Solo and the other movie, like he just stagnates for years.
No, that's a good point. My problem was just like, we already, like, I don't know, we didn't need to be shown those things because it was kind of awesome when it was just like he's the only person to do the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs. You don't have to show me that, right? That can just be part of his lore.
It's also that's kind of talking about like, the mystery of it all. We
Exactly.
don't need to know how he got the name Han Solo.
Right. I actually thought that when they was like signing up for command and they were like, your last name's Solo now. I was like, that's dumb. Like I get the joke and it's a funny joke, but it's also like, why can't his name just be Han Solo? Why does it have to be like because he's by himself, so he's Solo? It's like, but why? Why can't that just be part of his lore? A lot of this is...
But that's how people used to get their names.
I know.
Oh, you're a cobbler? Your last name is Cobbler. Haha.
Yeah. But that was also because, like, if you had two Steves, it was like, how do we tell our Steves apart? Oh, that Steve's a cobbler, and that Steve's a shoemaker. Wait, that's what a cobbler is. That Steve's a cobbler, and that Steve's a blacksmith. So we'll have Steve Cobbler and Steve Farrier. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
How can I get...
But that's...
Cobbler and shoemaker. Fuck. Like you had one job, Andrew. So, but my point is like that's how people got their names. But this it's different here. It is a funny bit, but I think it's sort of like, I don't know, a lot of this, instead of giving me more, it's the same thing that I was talking about with Boba Fett. Instead of making Han out to be more of a badass, a lot of things that should be cool just sort of happen to him.
Yeah.
Right? So yes, Han made the Kessel Run, but he only made the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs because he cheated.
Yeah.
He had
that
L7.
Doesn't matter to him though. We know.
No, but for us it's like I kind of wanted it to be like the reason Han did it is because he was just that good of a pilot.
Yeah.
You know, he's
That's
that
the
good
whole
of a
point,
pilot.
right? He's supposed to be like the best pilot.
The best pilot, exactly. But instead, he has L7's navigation system, and he uses coaxium, unrefined coaxium, in his engine to give him the speed. So really, when you think about it, did Han make the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs, or did they just toss a little coaxium into his core, unrefined coaxium into his core, and that got him there that fast because it literally like supercharged the engine? Was it his skill, or was it just the circumstances around him?
It's just the circumstances around him.
I don't think he actually did the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs. He cheated. And that doesn't matter. I mean, he would still like claim that he did the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs, because I totally would too, but the movie doesn't present it like, oh, you just cheated to make the Kessel Run 12 parsecs. And then he could say something funny like, yeah, but has anybody else done it in 12 parsecs? Like, just because I cheated doesn't mean I didn't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's Han Solo, but instead the implication is that he did the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs, and he's claiming that he did it in 12 parsecs. That's not the same. Han Solo, I'm okay with Han Solo shooting first. You know, the whole, like in this, we actually see Han shoot Beckett before Beckett can finish his sentence. I'm okay with that because I'm okay with Han shooting first. Han's not the good guy. Luke is. Han's a badass. He's a survivor. He's a bounty hunter. He's a rebel. He's a con artist. Yes, he has a heart of gold, but that doesn't mean he's not going to do what it takes to shoot first.
Yeah.
He's a fucking cowboy, and I like that. But for some reason, I think we're stuck with this idea where Han has to be this good guy with a heart of gold, so he can't double cross people. He can't. I don't know. It doesn't feel right to me. It feels like Han should be out for his own skin, and I think there's still too much of this heart of gold. Because part of what Han's character arc in the first movie is that he comes back. You know, he leaves, and we think he's gonna leave because he's a bounty hunter, not a bounty hunter, because he's like, you know. But he comes back
A little bit, yeah.
And I think that's such a huge moment for Han. But in this, you can sort of see, well, he's always going to help people. What's the growth then? What's the point? Really, I mean, you asked this really, really good question. Art doesn't need to justify itself. I completely agree. But for me, this movie doesn't really justify its existence. What's the point? What do I get out of this movie that I didn't already have?
Seeing the stuff that you talked about in the other original movie.
It doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
The best part of this movie was Lando Calrissian. I'd rather just see more of him.
I wouldn't mind the Lando movie.
Yeah.
I really like Donald Glover.
Yeah. I did read something really interesting about this movie that I want to run by you, especially because it's coming out this Saturday, I believe. This Friday. Is somebody said that the idea behind the Beckett character, that's Woody Harrelson's character, and I love Woody Harrelson, but the idea behind the Beckett character was to try and be a Long John Silver to Han Solo's Jim Hawkins, like in Treasure Island, which is hilarious because when I watched it through that lens, I was like, oh shit, this is just Treasure Planet. Which our version of Treasure Planet, by the way, comes out on Friday on CineCasters Classic.
Good to know.
Yeah, good to know. But I just was like, this is just Treasure Planet, and it's not a very good Treasure Planet. Yeah. Now, I do want to go over some things that I really did like, because I've been shitting on this.
Okay.
I love Woody Harrelson. I love Emilia Clarke. I thought one thing that I thought they did really, really well in this movie was make the technology look really flashy while still making us feel like the way the technology in the universe looks was like still from the era of the original trilogy. Do you know how like the original trilogy looked? Like all the technology was like super advanced for the time, but when we look on it now, it all looks like weird grid and everything's like in vectors and stuff like that. And you're like, that's so cheesy. This movie, and Rogue One does it too, but this movie, I really noticed how they were like, everything on the Millennium Falcon looks super slick, but it still has that same look as what it did in the original trilogy. It's really, really nice to see like that the technology looked the same while still making it look updated for this new era of filmmaking. I really appreciated that. Really appreciated that. Let me see here. Oh, there's a couple of really just good shots in here with the when they're flying out through like the cone in the atmosphere or whatever.
Yep.
I don't know what that's called, but like the gas cloud that they're coming out of, and all of a sudden you see lightning in the background and it lights up the Imperial battleship. That's a wicked shot. I don't care who you are. It's so menacing. Yeah. It's such a good shot. I did think that the space monster in the middle of the cloud was really, really cool. I'm a little upset that it was underutilized. I just would have liked more of it because that was dope. I liked that Han shot first. I liked at the very end when he does the poker redemption and you find out that the reason that he lost poker in the first place was because Lando was cheating. That was nice because in the first movie, or in the first scene when we saw the poker thing and Han thinks he's going to win and then he loses, I was like, oh, this is really disappointing because it's supposed to be like a moment where Han is showing how good he is at something. And it's good character development, but what winds up happening is instead of winning the ship, he winds up having to have somebody else save him, which happens over and over again. I'm tired of Han being saved by circumstances. I want Han to do something because it's Han.
Yeah.
I actually also think that Alden Ehrenreich or whatever his name is, the actor, I think he does a pretty good job of like being like charming. Like his smile is one where you're like, man, I just want to punch you in the face, but at the same time, you're doing a really good job as Han Solo.
Is that a crush I hear?
No, not for him. He doesn't get one. I have a bigger crush on Donald Glover. But whenever he smiles, it's the perfect smile where you're like when he smiles as Han Solo, you're like, I want to punch you, but at the same time, it's just so charming, and that's Han Solo. That was good casting. I just missed the voice. Harrison Ford just has that like, okay, kid, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I missed that. I needed a little bit of that.
It's also, young Han.
A young version of it,
You can hear that he's really trying with the, like, he's trying to match speech patterns and stuff. Right?
I thought that Lando was a better interpretation.
I think they both did a good job.
Agree to disagree. I thought he was a good cast choice, don't get me wrong, but I just didn't have enough of that like skeptical Han Solo. I guess they were trying to go for more of like he's still green around the edges and he's learning to be and I was like, nah, to me like Han Solo is I mean, those are hard shoes to fill, don't get me wrong. So he does a good job with what he has.
Yes, he does.
Great to see Chewbacca again. I just wish that Chewbacca had more of an arc. He only really has like that one thing, and I don't know, it just felt like he was there because he had to be. Like I wanted Chewbacca to be a character. I understand that like the whole gimmick with Chewbacca is that everyone understands what he says but the audience doesn't. But then I think, well, why not just give him subtitles then? I honestly think if Chewbacca had subtitles, then I would be like, oh, now we can read what he's saying. We can give him an arc, because he doesn't really feel like he has an arc, really. Not a very good one.
The thing is that not everyone can understand Chewbacca. Remember, there's that one scene where they're at the fire and he's talking about what he wants to do now that he's free. And we get that touching scene of like, oh, well, what's the difference between tribe and family? Right? Yeah.
And you're right. But as an audience member, if we want Chewbacca's voice to be heard, if we want his arc to happen, I think we need him subtitled. And people may say that's controversial.
That's also the reason why he was locked away, was because no one was bothering to learn his language.
Right, but you can still give us you can still give us the audience subtitles and have others not understand him.
True.
Right? That doesn't happen.
Are Wookiees like elves to humans? Well, does he like live forever?
They live a long time, yeah. Didn't you see at the end he was like 190 years old or whatever?
Yeah, I just thought that was really funny though, because he's like an elf compared to like most humans out there. Yeah.
I thought that was a good line where like, man, 190 years old, you look fantastic. And then like that's pretty good. Like I said, there was some things that I really wanted to love about this movie, but it was hard to. Also, I will say the train heist, I was so fucking invested. I'm sad that wasn't the climax of the movie, like setting up this whole train heist, because fuck yeah, that was awesome. This movie wants to be a heist movie. It just can't decide if it's a train heist or a mine heist or a liberation heist or you know what I mean? It bounces around from different things a little bit too much for me.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, enough of me talking. You talk now.
About what? I already kind of said my main points.
Whatever. I just feel
I don't
like
actually have any notes for this movie because I watched it and I was just like, just enjoying it. You know, nothing stood out to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've talked a lot about what it is. The big problem with this movie is I guess I don't really know what the theme is. Like what's the main thrust of this movie? What are they trying to tell me? Other than having a great time with Han Solo, which I admit I did have a great time watching Han Solo. And I never skipped any of this movie. I watched the whole thing. I had some problems with it, particularly everything with Dryden Voss and Kira.
Yep.
But I thought Beckett was a great mentor in the Long John Silver role. I thought the betrayals for the most part were pretty good, except for the last one with Kira. That one doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But everything felt really good. I didn't really see why Chewbacca wanted to stay with Han. That didn't really come across.
Yeah.
Which it probably could have. And Lando Calrissian I thought was perfect. So there's clearly some good things in there. I was a little disappointed. Maybe this is just me. Do you know when Infus Nest takes their helmet off and reveals that they're like part of the rebels? I didn't think that was totally necessary.
Yeah.
It sort of shows that Han is willing to like do the right thing for the rebels, but doesn't want to be a rebel. Sure, fine, okay. But I actually thought that that wasn't a great... I don't know, I kind of thought it was better when they were just marauders.
Yeah.
Because then it was like, oh, how does Beckett know these people? What's that about? Like, it's just mysterious, you know? Sometimes, maybe the real thrust of this movie should have been, sometimes it's okay to just let things be mysterious. We don't have to answer every question.
That's a good takeaway.
That's sort of what I did with my pitch. Should we get into some pitches?
Yeah, I want to start.
Okay. You were really, really upset with yours, so...
I think it's kind of... Garbo, as my friend would say.
Oh, so Garbo. All right.
It's Garbo. Sorry, I'm just like not comfortable how I'm sitting in my chair.
Why was it Garbo then?
First of all, I didn't finish watching the movie until 1 a.m.
Wow.
Last night.
That's not normal. That's pretty normal for
morning. Well, not for watching the movie.
Okay.
Normally, I'm still writing by 1 a.m. I'm not watching the movie at 1 a.m. And then I started and then deleted it, and then started and deleted it, and then started and deleted it. Because I was like, every time that I'm starting, I just want to rewrite the entire thing again. Like, I'm not changing anything.
Oh, you just want to rewrite the movie the way it was?
Yeah. I was having a hard time
scratch,
thinking of anything to change because there's a lot going on. And this is a problem that I have, that I know I have with like origin story type of movies, that it feels wrong to change it.
Because then you're changing the origin.
Everything that happened is already canon. We know about it. We can't change it because thinking about all the other bazillion other movies and whatever. Like, there's just, it feels like lofty shoes to fill, right? So I was like, just having a really hard time with it. Anyways, my pitch is only a page and a half.
That's okay, because mine's much longer.
Okay, good. And I just wanted it to be an origin story that doesn't tell the entirety of the origin, because then, yes, we get that stagnation between this movie and the original movie.
And how many years is that supposed to be? Because Darth Maul's not even dead yet, and that happens in Phantom Menace. So
yeah, it's. I thought this was supposed to take place in between the prequels and the original series.
Clearly it's supposed to be. Maybe even I think it's still supposed to take place even before Rogue One, because if he's giving them the coaxium, then that's how they're traveling through space.
So like, it just, there's so much time in between, and it's like, that's all of his stuff that he just did is like his big saving thing. Anyways, so mine's a little bit smaller, I guess. Small scale. I don't know.
Oh, Alyssa's covering her eyes.
It's fine.
Is that a Hallmark fine? It's fine.
Yeah, it's a Hallmark. So it starts with Han doing Empire flight training. He's already a part of the Empire. And we can see that he's kind of not really in line with the other pilots who are, pilots in training. He does all sorts of goofy tricks and he gets in trouble, even though he's still completing the tasks and doing what he needs to do as a pilot. He's, going out of his way to be a little flashy.
So just Top Gun, but in space.
Basically. So they have like a big test coming up and he does it all correct. But flashy. And he ends up like still beating the times for the other pilots by quite a bit. And then once he's done the test, he gets cornered and they're not happy with his attitude. He's like, you don't fit the Empire Centers, like, blah, 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 right? They're just, the jealous classmates trope. Because why not? One of his peers, Kira, is actually a fan of Han's flying. She's like, I think it's really cool that you can do all that stuff while still like, completing your tasks and doing what you need to. And she's just like, just keep doing what you do and being yourself for as long as you can, because in the Empire, that's kind of hard to do. So a little bit later, they have a group flight, just like a drill, which ends up turning into not a drill because they're attacked by rebels or something. And then Han is trying to do something fancy despite orders. His peers are not expecting him to do something. It kind of messes everything up. And I was thinking maybe one of his classmates ends up either very injured or dead. And he's basically given the option: give up on being a pilot and leave the Empire, or drop in ranks, learn how to obey orders, and move your way back up again. And he's like, well, I'm not going to just give up on being a pilot. Like, this is the best way for me to do this. Also, at this point, I figured, like, the Empire basically rules everything, right?
A lot of it.
And so it's just kind of the primary job source for most people is just, oh, I need a job, go join the Empire, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of why he's there. He's not there because he's passionate about, spreading the Empire's... what's the word?
Propaganda? Control?
Yeah.
Regime?
Control. Yeah. He's just there because it's a job. He wants his own ship. He would like to eventually retire and just, do some quiet runs. So he ends up dropping in rank, and then during a mission, I kind of figured it would just be one of those, like, they throw him on a mission that they're kind of expecting to fail. And then he ends up, like, running away. I really didn't think that part through, but he finds like an abandoned ship and he takes it, and we get this really awesome moment of like, yeah, Han's great because he can fly anything, but then the ship crashes because it's ancient.
That's a good comedy moment.
And then he on this other planet has to avoid Empire notice because now he's considered a deserter.
Yeah.
And a few years pass while he works on getting his ancient ship working again, because he's like, I didn't have to buy it, like, it's just sitting there, it's free. So he's been just, this is where we can get kind of that background, that outlaw background, where he's doing all sorts of odd jobs and not all of them are legal, and he's meeting up with groups of mercenaries and joining them for the occasional run, as he just is trying to make money and fix up his old ship. At one point, after a job, he cashes out and is headed towards his little, I don't know, base. I don't want to call it a base because it's not a base, but
hideout,
like a house, I guess. Hideout. And someone from his past, we don't know who this person is, notices him and is just like, oh, the boss would be interested in knowing that you're here. And suddenly we're like, oh, boss, what? Could be from the Empire or maybe something before that. And then we find out through this little interaction that he used to work for, I don't know, I don't want to say a syndicate because I know the syndicate is like a group
Yeah.
in the Star Wars universe, but like
Yeah.
he's just working for like one of those crime lords on one of the planets. And that he deserted them. And that's kind of like, oh, well, don't you know that your old boss has a bounty on your head because you deserted them? And now the Empire and Han's old boss has, you know, not really bounties on them, but he's now got to run again, and he's got nowhere really to turn to, because before he had the Empire to run to, and the Empire, because he's a part of the Empire, didn't really have the same, like he wouldn't be in danger from his old boss. So basically, Han is like, okay, well, I can get you some hush money. Just wait here. And so he runs over to the mercenaries and asks for a job. I figure it would be something on the same planet, maybe like that train. No, maybe not that train heist, because I wanted to save the train heist for later.
Yeah. The train heist.
I don't know what it would be, but just like a really quick job, big money. And by the time he gets back to give the hush money to the person who recognized him, he finds out that his hideaway and everything is just like completely destroyed, and he's just like, oh man, that took too long. So Han is freaked out, realizes he's probably got an actual bounty on his head at this point, and he doesn't have a ship, because the ship that he'd been working on for the past few years was completely destroyed, right? So he goes to the mercenaries that he had been working for, and he's just like, I need a ride off this planet. What can you do for me? And they're just like, oh, we were about to move. So they kind of pack up and head out. And he's like, well, I want to join your group, because, you know, now he's trying to think of how to cover his ass. If he's in a group of mercenaries, he's not going to be handed over, right? But then he finds out that they know that he's a bounty on his head, and suddenly he's like,
Oh, shit.
okay, now what?
Yeah.
So you know what he does? He runs again.
I'm starting to see a pattern here, maybe a little bit of a theme. Good.
So they stop at the next planet, which is got a surprising amount of Empire presence, and he's obviously worried. And the mercenaries that he's traveling with are like, oh, you stay with the ship, avoid attention, just keep an eye on the ship for us. And he's like, nah, I'm out. So he runs. And then I figured it would kind of be one of those things where he's just like in between cities, he finds like a farm or something, and they have a Wookiee enslaved to do menial tasks for them around the farm. And it's like a lawless area, and somehow they find out that he's, got a bounty on his head. And so they're like, feigning kindness. Like, they're like, oh yeah, we'll feed you, just, hang out for a bit, and then we'll, you can go on your way once you're arrested up. But they're actually like, not doing that. They're like thinking about, like, I don't know, drugging him or something. We could see that. I don't know how it would happen, but yeah. And they end up sending like Chewie. We don't know he's Chewie, but we find out later that he's Chewie. After Han, but Han knows how to speak Wookiee, and so instead they team up to free Chewbacca and get away from that place. So this is kind of a little bit of a turning point where he's not running anymore. He's like, I'm gonna help, but only because you're gonna help me. So let's get out of here, right? While they walk, they're talking about their dreams. Han wants to be a pilot. He wants to kind of be his own boss, and Chewie wants to go and free his people. While they're walking to the next town, Han notices the mercenary ship above him, and they're like, oh man, they're heading straight to the same town that we're going to. Hopefully they'll move on by the time we get there, once they notice I'm not there. So they sneak on, they sneak into the town, and they're looking at ships to get, like, to steal, to take out. Again, just trying to run away, right? And Kira, of all people, shows up, and she's just like, you're a deserter, you like disappeared, we thought you died, and then she's like, but I'm happy to see you alive, because I was hoping that you would work your way up the ranks again and join me on the battlefield or whatever, because she's like, "You're the greatest pilot I've ever seen," or something like that.
Gee, thanks.
And then Han is like, you're like the only person in the Empire I can trust. I need a ship to get out. There's a bounty on my head because I tried to get out of a bad situation before joining the Empire, and now I'm getting called a deserter there. I'm getting called a deserter everywhere. And she's like, okay, well, help me with this job and I'll see that you get out. And she's like, because, again, I won't tell anyone who you are. She's like, I'll offer you protection, and as long as you help me, then you'll be free. So then we can have the big train heist, because the job that she is working on is getting some of the coaxium, and the mercenaries that Han was with were also after that, and they just saw Han as like an extra bounty, like an extra little bit of pocket change to go with their payout after getting the coaxium. And I figured, I really didn't have it in my brain to figure out how that fight would go, but I figured it would be kind of like in the original movie, how they had the train heist, and then what were they called?
The witch.
The group on
Crimson
those
Dawn?
speeders.
Oh, they're just called the Marauders?
The Marauders, yeah. How like the Marauders came in. I figured it would be like that, but it's like the mercenaries that came in.
Yeah.
And like ended up just ruining the whole thing. And Chewie and Han end up fighting their way out of a bad situation together. And he's like, Kira, can you hire me? Like, I want to properly do this. I want to properly buy a ship. I want to pay off the bounty on my own head. And he's just like, he's kind of made a decision. And then she's like, yeah, sure, I'll offer you protection, and we can work on this. This is like a major plot hole, but whatever. And then in the end, she like turns him down as a love interest, and a few years pass of him like, going quote unquote straight.
Yeah.
And then Han is like celebrating. He's like on his final run. He has to make the Kessel run. He just needs a freighter to take. Just like this final run for Kira, and then he's free to do whatever he needs or whatever he wants. And then we can meet Lando, because he's originally going to fly with Lando until he sees his ship, and he's just like, no, I need that ship. That's going to be my ship. And then we can see him kind of make that turn of, no, I'm actually going straight is not for me.
Yes, love it.
So I really struggled with coming up with something original for this.
It's hard. But what I did notice is that you had this sort of interesting thing about like running, constantly deserting. The only problem with the whole thing at the end is because it feels like when he turns straight, that's him not running. So then when he finds the Millennium Falcon, it's him running again.
I
so
kind
you
of
undercut your
envisioned
own team
it less as him running and more just him like relapsing back into old habits. I guess which would be
fine.
running.
No. That's fine too, because then it's like that can be your theme as well, because then it winds up being like, well, is Han really turning things around, or is he just relapsing into his old ways? Because then when we because this is an origin, when we hit him at the end and he finally commits to Leia and to the rebels, then we see that turnaround. He doesn't relapse into his old ways.
Yeah. So maybe him going, not stealing, but like winning the ship and kind of running away from the Empire again is his way of, like almost like a midlife crisis kind of deal, where he just goes off and does what he wants because, it's the good old days.
It's the good old days.
And then by the end of the original series, it's like, no, I'm going straight.
He can't
again.
run. Yeah, he's going straight. Right. But he actually goes straight. He has a kid.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, no, that was good. At least what I liked is that you at least, tried to put a through line through it, because I felt like the original
really
doesn't quite have a through line. So
and there was so much going on and so many characters in the original one. I just tried to tone it down. I think that's a kind of a running theme for me, is there's just too much going on. Just
too much going on. Yeah. So my movie starts out with a young man in the middle of a war zone. And he winds up seeing a captain take command of some troops. And so he's just like, you're the commanding officer. I'm going to follow you. Then he realizes, and the captain's like, what the heck are you doing here? Like, you clearly have no idea how to like actually survive in war. And he's like, yeah, I'm a pilot. And then the Empire showed up and was like, do you want to be a soldier? And I was like, no. And they were like, cool, now you're a soldier. And he was like, well, I'm actually a pilot. And they were like, cool, we don't need pilots. We need soldiers. So he's like, that's why I'm here. And the captain's like, sure, whatever, likely story, probably not true. And so he's basically like, you know, they do that whole thing, and then Beckett's like, well, hey, hang on, or sorry, Han is like, wait, hang on a second, like you guys aren't really a squad. Like, what are you doing here? And he's like, we've been sent on a special mission. And he's like, what's your name? And he's like, my name's Han Solo. And so Beckett's like, cool, my name's Captain Beckett. I need a distraction. Can you make a distraction at the base so I can carry out this mission? So Han sneaks in, makes a distraction at the base camp, and then goes to meet up with these raiders. And he's like, well, you guys are going to let me on. And Beckett's like, sure. And he let him on the ship. And then Beckett's like, you did a really, really good job. And he's like, well, otherwise I was just going to like call you out as deserters. And Beckett's like, here's the thing. They're already on the ship. He's like, here's the thing. It's my one piece of advice to you. Never trust anyone. And he pushes Han outside of the hatch and then closes it. So Han falls like a couple feet to the ground. And then over the speakers yells out that Han's a deserter, so that they won't listen to Han when he tries to tell them that like they're actually like stealing the ship or whatever. So Han's like, well, shit. Now everyone thinks he is a deserter, even though he was going to desert. He was going to try and leave with Captain Beckett. So then now he's seen as a deserter. So he basically gets a kangaroo court, like sentencing, court-martialing, and almost like days later, like how fast it happens, Han finds himself on as a slave in the middle of this like coaxium mine, tied to a Wookiee, like a day later on a different planet. Like that's how fast it happens. And the slave driver is like, well, you're new here, but we didn't have like any more new slaves, so we have attached you to this Wookiee here, and if he doesn't like you, he'll rip your fucking arms off. And Han's like, cool, okay, thanks. But Han actually speaks and understands a little bit of Wookiee pretty well. And he starts speaking with him. And this guy's name is Chewbacca. And Chewbacca explains that he was enslaved by the Empire along with his people. They were all taken as slaves. And when he asks Han where he's from, Han's like, it doesn't matter. It's not where I'm from. It's where I'm going. Right?
Yep.
So Han's like, we got to make an escape. But they're directly tied by the leg to each other, Chewie and Han. And he's like, we got to help each other. That's the only way we're going to get out of here. And Chewie is like, well, I don't want to escape. I want to stay here and get my family free. And Han's like, well, like being a slave here, being tied to me isn't going to help them. So like if we work together, we can either save each other or we can like keep each other attached, because there's no way we're getting these collars off anytime soon. So they agree to work together. They wind up stealing a small ship. And I think it would be hilarious to do this entire thing while they're attached to each other.
Yeah.
Like the whole, like
Definitely.
this whole sequence.
That would be pretty funny.
Yeah, so they're like on the ship and flying, and I want it to be the small cockpit so that Chewie is like super tight, and the fact that they're attached to each other means that he has to like hang over Han as Han's flying. But Han does some spectacular flying to get away from the Empire, right? Spectacular, and managed to avoid all of them. Like we're talking like really sick flying. And as they're free, another ship shows up from behind a moon and intercepts them. And they're taken immediately onto the ship. They're still attached. And Chewie like turns to Han as like, yo, this is Dryden Voss. This is a big bad dude. Like I've heard about this guy, never met him, but like we got to watch our step here. But they don't really have a choice but to sit and listen because they were intercepted by this guy. So Dryden comes out and he explains he's super impressed with Han's little escape attempt. It was quite some flying. And with no guns, they still managed to evade the Empire. Unfortunately, Dryden was I was basically going to attempt to steal some coaxium from under the Empire's nose by hiring a bunch of people. But your little escape attempt made that really impossible because all of a sudden everyone was on guard. So here's the deal. You fly from me or I give you back to the Empire. In exchange, if you actually bring me the coaxium, you'll get a small cut and your freedom, and I don't ever want to see your faces again. However, if you do get caught, you can't mention this. You can't mention my name or any of this to anyone because either I'll kill you or I have an agreement with the Empire and they can't know that I'm trying to steal from them. So Han and Chewie are basically like, well, we don't really have a choice. They're stuck, right? And Chewie is like, how does this help me get my people free from the planet? And Han's like, I have no idea, but we don't really have a choice. It's either this or basically go back to the slave mines, best option, or get killed, worst option, right? So they agree to do this. And basically, he's like, Dryden basically explains, you're going to join the crew that I have that's going to steal some coaxium. You're going to be a new pilot. And Chewie, you're going to be some of the muscle. Right? Yeah. Like the literal muscle. And because he's a Wookiee. And Chewie is like, well, Han is like, well, this solves your problem. This will put us back on the planet. Right? And Chewie's like, all I want to do is save my people. And Han's like, yeah, I want to save your people too, but this will also give us our freedom. And Chewie's like, yeah, how much of this is really about my people? And Han's like, well, I can't be as selfless as you. Maybe it's a little bit of the money and the freedom and helping your family. Like, why can't it be all three? And they can have sort of this like chummy thing there. Dryden also finally like takes their collars off. So they're actually like able to walk around freely now. So Dryden sends Han to that moon base. They came out from behind the moon. He sends Han down to the moon base to meet with the rest of the crew and the person he's put in charge of the operation. When they get down to the planet, the person Dryden's put in charge of the operation is a woman named Kira, who Han seems to actually know from somewhere. And they're clearly attracted to each other. There's clearly some background there. But there's no time for that because she has to introduce the rest of the crew, which turns out to be Captain Beckett and his crew. Because what they were doing is they were stealing an Empire cargo ship that's what they were doing on the planet when they met Han for this exact heist, right? They also meet Lando Calrissian, who's going to pilot the Millennium Falcon, which is he claims is the fastest ship, and he wants his take. And they meet L7, who's going to be the navigator and logistics, and then Kira, of course, is going to be the leader. And Chewbacca is now the physical muscle, and Han is going to be in charge of driving the cargo ship, not the Millennium Falcon. Okay. So the heist is basically they're going to steal the refined coaxium from a train transporter through the canyon, that whole thing that we saw happen with the cargo transporter. Basically, they use the cargo transporter, then they're going to get the cargo transporter, steal, like with one of the cars, steal the coaxium, and then actually like load the transporter, the whole ship and the coaxium into the Falcon, and then the Falcon would like hyper speed away because it's faster. So it's basically like put the car in the car and drive away. It's basically that kind of heist.
Put the car in the car.
Put the car in the car. So the train thing happens with Beckett's crew, and we see Beckett's, like with the whole bridge, and everything happens exactly the same. And Beckett actually takes Han under his wing. He even gives him the gun, right? And you see like Beckett's actually like not trustworthy, but he's teaching Han some skills. And he's like, you've really got some, you managed to get out of being a slave on your own. You're clearly a good pilot, So there's something there. But when a bunch of Marauders show up, the whole thing goes sideways. They manage to get the cargo onto the Falcon, but as the Marauders are attacking, Kira's on the back of the ship, at the back of the Falcon, and she makes the decision that they're going to have to lose some of the coaxium because one of the Marauders hits some of the coaxium and it damages the Falcon.
Okay.
And so they have to land, and they only have a little bit of the coaxium. Han is disappointed, but Kira is panicking. She's like, I needed this money so that I could buy my freedom from Dresden Voss. Like, I needed that money. So if there's not enough coaxium, I don't get enough of my cut, which means I can't buy my way out, which means I'm stuck, right? And she's like, we need another way. And Beckett just wanted his money, so he's like, look, if we don't bring the exact amount that Dryden Voss hired us to get, he's gonna kill us. So here's what I suggest we do. We're gonna go into the mines and we're gonna steal some refined coaxium, and then we're going to take it somewhere and we're going to refine it and then hit up the rendezvous point, and we're all going to get paid, and Dryden Voss doesn't need to know anything different. So they go into the mines, find the unrefined coaxium, which is unstable, and they'll have to refine it, but that's fine. As they're before they head in, Han and Kira can have a moment, and they're clearly like teasing that they know each other, and there's like romance and whatnot. And Chewbacca is like, yo, how do you know her? And Han's like, it doesn't matter. It's not it's not about what happened in the past. It's where I'm going, right? And Beckett's like, you gotta be careful who you trust. Like, how well do you know her? And he's like, it doesn't matter. It was in the past. So they go into the mine. They find the coaxium, but before they can find the coaxium, Chewie just bails. He just bails, and Han is there with the coaxium, and he's like, fuck, and he makes a decision, and he runs after Chewie because he knows where Chewie is going. So even though they're betraying like Beckett and the rest of the crew, he knows where Chewie's going, and they're basically going to liberate the rest of the Wookiees. And Han decides to help Chewie, and they open up and they get the bunch of the slaves out, including the Wookiees, and they start this huge rebellion. But it also costs them a lot of time. They get back to the coaxium, but it costs them a lot of time. So Lando's like flying the Falcon, and they're going to make their way to where the refinery is and offload it. So they made it. And here we can have some fun, because Beckett, when they're all out there, Beckett shoots Lando just point blank. Just straight up shoots Lando. And is like, because he's like, Lando, who is actually trying to leave the ship, leave with the Falcon with the coaxium on board. And so he's like, I can't let you do that. And Han's like, oh, you found him. That's great. But then it turns out that Lando was going to leave with the Falcon, but also that Beckett was at the same time trying to leave with one of the cargo ships with some of the coaxium. And so Beckett basically leaves on one of the cargo ships, and they don't have that coaxium. It's already been refined. So he just... And Han's like, well, what do I do? And as Beckett is leaving, he goes to shoot Lando again, this time to kill him. And Han jumps in the way and gets his shoulder hit. But he saves Lando. And Lando goes like, well, I mean, you saved my life. I know what that coaxium is worth to you. Take my ship and go get it back. Right? So Beckett's gone away with some of the coaxium. The rest of the coaxium is still being refined. Han gets on the Millennium Falcon with Kira and Chewie, and they launch after Beckett, and Beckett's trying to lose them in this asteroid zone. They're going around, but Han is a better pilot, and Beckett knows this, and he goes, well, I can either get caught, but I'm tired of the struggle. I'm tired of looking for the next big score. I'm done with this. And he takes his blaster, and he shoots himself in the face.
Oh.
And now all of a sudden, his ship, which is loaded with coaxium, is hurtling through this asteroid field. And if it even hits like one asteroid, it's going to blow the whole thing up with the amount of coaxium on there. So Han does some crazy flying. He's like, we got to get out of here. But Kira's like, we need that coaxium. We need it. I need it in order to buy my freedom, right? She's like, if I buy my freedom, we can be together, Han. And Han's like, shit. Like, okay, fine. And he does some wicked flying. They manage to dock the ship, this cargo ship, in the back of the Falcon. Just the three of them, right? With Chewie's help. They get back to where the refinery was, only to find out that the injured Lando has left with the rest of the coaxium. So they got it back from Beckett, only to find that Lando had double crossed them and got them off planet so he could leave with the rest of it. So they don't have nearly enough coaxium that they said they were going to have. And Kira's like freaking out, and Han's like, you can have my cut. You can have my cut. Right? And Chewie's like, yeah, this was never about the cut for me. Like, I'm going to go back and be with the Wookiees anyway, right? Like, that's once this is all over, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to my home planet. So they're like, you can have our cut. And Kira's like, okay. So they go back to Dryden Voss, and the exchange is super risky because they don't have as much as they were hired to steal, not even by half. But Dryden's like, that's okay. We have ways of finding Lando, and he double-crossed you and me. So they're paid. But of course, Han gave up his cut, and Chewie is going to leave with the Wookiees. Which is when Kira reveals that when they were doing the heist at the back at the train heist, only a bit of the coaxium that blew up, that damaged the Millennium Falcon, it was never hit by the Marauders. That was all a setup. Ooh. She dropped some coaxium to make it look like that they had lost it all, but she'd actually stashed it on board the Falcon where nobody could find it, and they actually have like way more coaxium than they thought they had. Because it turns out this entire time she's been working for Dryden Voss, and they like duped Han this whole time. And he's like basically on his own because now Chewbacca's left to go be with the Wookiees, and it's just him and Kira, and he's fighting off against Dryden, but Chewie shows up last minute when he realizes that like when it came down to it, and it was between the coaxium and saving the other Wookiees, Han left the coaxium behind. And so Chewie is like, I can leave the Wookiees behind to go save Han. So he shows up last minute, saves Han, rips Dryden Voss's arms off, which basically kills him. And then Kira is like, you don't understand. I had to. Dryden Voss, like, I was his slave. Like, I was owned by him. I had to. I didn't have any other choice. You have to boom. And Han shoots her. Doesn't even let her finish. He's like, I'm not falling for that one anymore. I can't do it. And he shoots her. And then Han asks why Chewie didn't go back with the Wookiees as they're leaving. And Chewie asks him how he knew, or like, he's like, well, how did you know Kira? And from this, Han understands like why Chewie would answer a question with another question. It's because it doesn't matter where you're from. It's where you're going. and they jump off into hyperspace looking for Tatooine and the next job. So I like that one. This is also my sort of fuck you to Disney. Because in the end, we don't actually really learn that much about Han, because it's not where he's from, it's where you're going, right?
Yeah.
Same with Star Wars. It's not what we've done, it's what we're doing. Stop going backwards, Disney.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my pitch.
I mean, we can go backwards and learn about Darth Plagueis the Wise.
Then let's go way the fuck back. Let's go like Old Republic back. You know what I mean? Like, let's go to the foundation and discovery of the Jedi. Like, give me something new.
Please.
Yeah. Well, that's my pitch for Solo, which I still think has some problems. It's not the greatest, but at its heart, I think this movie wants to be like a space western / heist movie. And I really think it is. I wanted to run something by you to see if you knew this as well, but there's a cameo in here, which is what brought me onto it. The cameo was Warwick Davis. Do you know who Warwick Davis is?
No. Okay,
Warwick Davis is the person who plays Professor Flitwick in Harry Potter, but his most famous role probably is from a movie called Willow, which we've actually done on CineCasters. Mm-hmm. Willow was directed by Ron Howard, who directed this movie. Apparently, I didn't know this, but apparently most of this movie had actually been shot and done when the two directors, who are quoted here as producers, got into some conflict with Disney and the other writers, and they brought in Ron Howard and reshot almost 70% of this movie.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think part of the reason why this movie suffers a little bit is because it's like 70% reshoots.
Yeah.
Like, so the person who was playing Dryden Voss was actually played by a completely different actor originally.
Interesting.
And then they brought in what's his name? Vision to play the character, because it just like apparently wasn't, or they couldn't get the original actor to come back in time to do the reshoots, so they just hired a brand new actor. I gotta say, like, I think part of the reason that this movie doesn't work so well is because it's all shot in reshoots.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I don't know. But what are your thoughts, last minute thoughts on Solo, A Star Wars Story?
I don't know. I liked it. If you're not thinking too hard about it, it's like a really fun movie. To me,
it's clearly an adventure movie.
It's more of like a... Yeah.
But I think I had a lot more fun.
Story.
I had a lot more fun watching Rogue One, and you don't really have to think about that one, and it still flows quite well.
Yeah.
So you were talking about how, you know, how they go to Tatooine. But if this takes place before Darth Maul, that means that Han was actually on Tatooine while Phantom Menace takes place.
Potentially, which
means he should have been like there, because he was working for Jabba the Hutt, and Jabba the Hutt appears in Phantom Menace.
No, but I think at that point he was running from Jabba the Hutt.
No, because that would have been probably around the same time, wouldn't it have been?
Maybe. I don't know. The timelines are so hard to keep track
because
of.
Darth Maul's still alive. I don't know. That's Darth Maul being in there fucks everything up.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, where can people find you?
You can find me on twitch.tv/AlyssaLou with 3 O's.
Alyssa's playing a lot of Elden Ring now, so go check that out.
I am. Oh my god, I got so lost.
That's the point of the game. You can find our band Robot Philosopher anywhere you listen to dope music. We are also playing some shows if you're local in Southern Ontario. And you can check out our other channel, the CineCasters, for more... CineMasters, for more scripted content. And be sure to stick around here. Last Friday, when this comes out, will be Treasure Planet, if you're interested in a little bit more sci-fi with a lot of the same kind of themes. All right, peace out. Thanks for chilling with us.
Bye.